Okay, welcome to Chapter 17. Chapter 17 is on data persistence and sharing. Starts on page 419. Okay, now we've done the thing with the bundle before, right? So, like when you do a device rotation and the activity gets killed and gets brought back up, and then so it kind of remembers where it is, right? Okay, cool. Well, that's not the only way, or I'm sorry, that's not the only thing you have to worry about when it comes to passing data around. Okay, there's two more scenarios that we haven't talked about yet, but that's what we're going to do today. Okay, so one of the ways is I have two separate activities. In my one application has two activities, and I want to pass data from one to the other or the other to that way. That technique does not use a bundle at all. It uses another technique we're going to learn. And then the third one is, what if I type my name, address, and phone number, and I wanted to save that between runs? No, we're not talking about device rotation. We're talking about the application's been completely shut down. Maybe you even turned off your phone, pulled the battery out of the phone. I mean, it's completely 100% dead. And then you put the battery back in, turn the phone on, and bring up the app a second time, and it remembers the stuff that you had put in there. So that's the three techniques. One is like how to handle things like during device rotation. The other is how to pass data between intents. Well, that's a term we've talked about a little bit. How to use an intent to pass data between one activity to another activity inside the same application. And then the third one is, how do I persist it even after the thing is completely shut down? Okay. All right, so here we go. On page 419, they're talking about intents. That reminds me of one of those goofy jokes about, where do you sleep in a camp out? But anyway, so what if my application needs to launch another application? For example, I want to launch a browser. Okay, well, I'm not going to write a browser, for goodness sakes. Hopefully the Android device already has a browser. So I've got me a form going already. So here's my activity. I've got a label and a text box and a button, right? Nothing fancy. And I went ahead and made up an event handler for this guy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new intent. An intent is a strange term. So intents are used to launch a completely new application like a browser or a calculator or something like that. And it's used for launching another activity inside your own application that you wrote. Obviously, I didn't write the calculator or I didn't write the browser, right? Okay, cool. So here we go. So I'm going to go here and just start building me a brand new intent. So I'm going to say intent. I'm going to call mine browser just because it's kind of cool. It's equal to a new intent. And then you have to give it the intent type. And so there's a bunch of these guys, as you can see here. And I want the one called action view. And you might think, view? What the hell's that got to do with browsing? Well, the thing is, what we're doing is the action that we're picking is to view a document. And the document just so happens to be a web browser document. So therefore, I'm viewing like that. Okay. So now I'm action view. And then what I have to do is I have to pass to it some data because I don't want to just open any browser, although I guess I could. So this time I'm going to say I'm going to do set data, which allows me to pass extra data to it. And so in this case, I want to pass something called a URI, and all a URI is a cleaned up version of a Universal Resource Locator, or URL kind of guy. So don't worry about what this means. I'm just going to type URI.parse and then put in whatever I want. http://www.emmettgray.com or whatever it is you want to go to. So I've created an intent, told it I want to view an HTML style document. I give it the HTML style document, and then I want to actually start the activity. So start activity. and I give it the guy that I just did. Okay. Now, for this to really work well, you probably had to have run the browser at least one time in your emulator, because it's going to ask you, like, do you want the prompt, and, you know, hello, welcome to Chrome, and all the rest of that stuff. So I've already done that on my emulator. So let me hit the button here and bring this guy up. Okay, so here's my guy. And so what happens when I click on other activity? It pops me over to a web page. Now, unlike the other one, this is a completely separate application. So I really don't have the opportunity to go in there and, like, change the action bar, or go in there and, you know, add a little arrow or do anything like that. So this is just popping up an honest-to-God web page. That's it. That's all it does. So if you want to get back, you're going to have to hit the back button on your own, right? Because I don't have the opportunity to go in there and tweak that guy. Okay? So that's a very quick demo of what an intent is all about. But this works great in our little emulator in the debug mode. But when it came time to publish this application, there's actually an extra step you have to do. Because the intent also acts as permissions. So if I go to under manifests up here at the very top and I click on the Android manifest, I actually have to add an extra thing in this intent filter. So I want to say action, and it's going to be, you know, Android name, just like you'd expect, except in Android intent action view. Now what this is going to say is it's okay for me to open a document, open a URL. Now we don't need this while we're just messing around in the emulator, but when it comes time for you to packaging up your document and sending it off, you could even be more specific. You could go in here and say, yeah, but only on this domain or this one specific URL. You could do that. That keeps people from, once you launch the web page, keep them from going there and navigating away to something else. Okay, so this kind of sort of makes sense. Cool. All right. So the intent filter basically says when I install this application, it's going to come up and say, this application requires access to the internet. Do you want to allow or deny? And so the user has the opportunity to go, no, I don't want this. So this is what the intent filter is about. The intent filter says during the install, here's what this thing requires. Are you okay with that? Okay. So we kind of sort of did this in Chapter 14 when we did an activity of our own. So we're going to do that again, except this time we're going to pass data to it. The last time we did it, we didn't pass any data. Okay, so I'm going to close this guy, and I'm going to create me a brand new activity. So I'm just going to go here, and actually I can start with app. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to say no, and I want an honest to good activity, and I'm going to start with the same one we always start with, which is empty. Okay, and I'm going to call mine, how about other activity? And so I do want to create a layout file, even if I'm going to blow it away. It chose activity other. I like that. And it's not really a launcher, so I don't have to worry about that part. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm just going to hit finish. And I have another activity. Cool. And just like before, I'm going to blow this away and start over. You know how this works. So I'm going to go here and say delete. Then I'm going to go here and say new. And I want this to be activity other. And I want this guy to be just the linear layout like we've always been doing. Okay, so now we're back to normal. So all I'm going to do here is just like put me a plain old text file in here. Let me edit text guy. I guess I'll give it a name or something to. Let me clean this up a little bit. So et name, and it currently doesn't have anything in it. So I'm. Oh, you're right. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to call it ET name other. All right, cool. And I'm going to wipe this out so it doesn't have any text in it at all to start with. Okay, so far so good. Everything makes sense. So now it's time for me to launch that activity from an intent. Cool. That's what we're after. All right, so I'm going to go back to this guy, and I'm going to comment this out. Hey, you guys remember how to do this fancy trick? If you hold the control key down and hit the slash, it'll comment out a chunk at a time. Okay. So now I want to create an intent. So this time I'm going to call it intent, like new activity or something like that. So intent new act is equal to new intent. Except this time, instead of giving it one of those pre-built ones, you know, where you have this action thing, I'm going to actually have to give it some stuff. I'm going to have to go in there and tell it that I want specifically what Java class file that I want. So this starts off with this to give it some context of where it's coming from. Then the other one is going to be the class file, which in my case is other activity.class. Like that. I know this is a little weird, so I have to pass it both the context, which is who's calling, and then I have to give it the actual name of the class file, which is kind of odd, but hey, whatever. It works. And then I want to start the new activity. So that part's going to be about the same. Start activity. And I'll say new activity. Okay, let's just see if this thing works before we get much further. So let's stop this guy. Bring this guy up. And I hit new activity and boink, I get a brand new thing. Doesn't have anything in it yet, but that's okay. So that part worked. But now what I need to do is I need to pass some data to it. So before I start the activity, I actually want to pass something. So what I want to do is I want to grab some data. So I'm going to say new activity. And I'm gonna say put extra. How's that for cool? Put extra. Which means just put some extra data out there. And this one's gonna be called, I don't know, name. And what I want to send to it is what's currently in that edit text box. Well, actually, hang on. Let's make it a little bit more classy here. Okay, I'm gonna say string name is equal to, and then I'll go ahead and do et name get text dot toString. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to put extra. I'm going to put the name in here. So now when I create the application, I'm going to grab something from my form and pass it off to the new activity. Now, what do you have to do at the other end to make this thing happen? Well, it's about the same. About the same. I'm going to need me a new, so this is an edit text. And I call this one et name other. And then, of course, down here I have to inflate the guy just as normal. Et name other is equal to find view by r.id. Et name other. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is extract that thing from the intent that we passed. So I'm going to say string name is equal to, and then get intent, which means get the intent that created me, so to speak, or that was passed to me. And then get string extra, and then the tag, which is called name. Okay, by the way, this is not exactly how they do it in the book, so just kind of sort of pay attention. So now I'm going to say et name other set text, and we're going to do something like, I don't know, hello space name, like this. Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, so we'll have to try this in just a few seconds.